And there came a time known as the third millennium, a time when the people of the earth were ravaged by disease, pestilence, and poisons. A time when the horsemen of the apocalypse ran the multinational corporations. A time when America's citizens were waking up to a future of no money and no jobs. A time when a special man came forward, a man that your American taskmasters did not want you to see or hear, a man whom they took prisoner and hid away, a man whose name is Yahweh Ben Yahweh. For telling people the truth, Yahweh Ben Yahweh was taken prisoner by the minions of darkness. For giving people hope, Yahweh Ben Yahweh was led away to Golgotha. This is the continuing story of the past and of the future, about good and about evil, about your life and what it will become. A story that tells why the so-called black man of America had to suffer for over 400 years. A story of what will happen to the so-called black man if he returns to the laws, statutes, judgments, and commandments of God Yahweh. Olam shall Yahweh. The universe of Yahweh. Brought to you by the nation of Yahweh. Working for you and your future.
Good or evil, life or death. This is your choice in this, the year 6004, the year of judgment. Shalom and welcome to the universe of Yahweh. My name is Josiah Israel, and I am your host. For over 7 years now, we have been discussing some of the things the Bible said would occur in the day of judgment. We warned you that the weather was going to change, and that the powerful forces of nature were going to bring terrible destruction upon America and the world, and that it was going to get worse and worse and worse, and it has. We alerted you that violence in the public schools was going to increase, and it has. We showed you in the scriptures that forewarned of wickedness in high places, and we are witnessing today gross misconduct and serious crimes being committed by some of our highest elected officials. What lies ahead for America and the world is nothing less than the proliferation of deadly diseases and plagues as foretold in the Bible. But there is hope. The Bible tells us that at the end, the Messiah would be revealed, and at that time, he would save the righteous from this impending destruction. That one, the Messiah, is Yahweh Ben Yahweh. So we invite you to join us in the universe of Yahweh, featuring the commandments of Yahweh and the Messiah revealed. First, the commandments of Yahweh.
For 6,000 years, we have been suffering at the hands of rulers who transgress the laws of Yahweh and teach all people throughout the earth to transgress the laws of Yahweh. In order to have peace, love, and harmony upon the earth, we must return to keeping the commandments, judgments, laws, and statutes of Yahweh. All of us have been taught that the commandments, judgments, laws, and statutes in the Old Testament Bible do not count today. In this series, we will show you that the commandments, judgments, laws, and statutes in the Old Testament Bible do count, and that if we govern our lives according to these commandments, judgments, laws, and statutes of God Yahweh, then we will have peace and goodwill upon the earth forever. We invite you to study along with us. However, in order to do so, you must have the following tools: a King James Version of the Bible, several dictionaries, the New Strong's Exhaustive Concordance, a set of encyclopedias, Hebrew and Greek lexicons, a thesaurus, and a synonym finder.
Shalom. My name is Sarah Abigail Yisrael. We are discussing the commandments of Yahweh. Many people have been taught that the first commandments ever given to man were given to Moses. The truth of the matter is, the first two commandments ever given to man were given to Adam in the Garden of Eden, which were to dress it and to keep it. We are still discussing the word keep. In Hebrew, the word keep is shamar, and one of its meanings is to be on the lookout for, or to be expectant of, the future birth of a child. We have been revealing some of the things the Bible said would happen to this one child, the Messiah, Yahweh Ben Yahweh, that would clearly identify him as the one promised to come, to deliver or restore us, the lost sheep of the house of Israel, the so-called black man of America, who are descendants of slaves to the Promised Land. Last week, we began to decode Matthew, chapter 27, verse 64. So let us review some of what we discussed. We reiterated that the New Testament was never fulfilled by anyone called Jesus, and that the New Testament is a prophecy being fulfilled today in Yahweh Ben Yahweh, the true Messiah, who was prophesied to come in the Old Testament. Our main topic of discussion was about the chief priests and Pharisees coming together to Pilate, symbolized as a superior court judge, to beg him to command, therefore, that the sepulchre of Yahweh Ben Yahweh be made sure until the third day. We began to decode this verse by first going to the books of understanding, the dictionaries, to get an understanding of both command and therefore. We learned from the word command that this was a legal matter that involved a prisoner, Yahweh Ben Yahweh, a judge, lawyers, and parole commission authorities. The definition of command verified that the issue was about the outcome of a court's decision on some point of law pertaining to some action that must be performed by Yahweh Ben Yahweh until he served the last third of his 18-year sentence. The definition of the word therefore affirmed that the main source of the chief priests and Pharisees' concern resulted from the Federal Bureau of Prisons' system of counting. While in prison, Yahweh Ben Yahweh earned statutory and extra good time credits. Being that he was sentenced under the Bureau's old law, he was required to serve only 2/3 of his sentence in prison. After having served 2/3 of his prison sentence with no infractions, Yahweh Ben Yahweh received a mandatory release from prison on September 25, 2001, to serve the remaining third of his prison sentence on parole in Miami. We concluded from these facts that the reason the chief priests and Pharisees wanted a superior court judge to make a decision on some point of law requiring that some action be performed by Yahweh Ben Yahweh to make the sepulchre sure until the third day was for the very same reason that Yahweh Ben Yahweh was sent to prisons far away from his district, so he could have absolutely no contact with his disciples. We told you that the facts to prove our conclusion beyond a reasonable doubt are hidden in the word sepulcher. So today, let us carefully examine the word sepulcher. On the authority of Webster's New World Dictionary, 3rd College Edition, copyright 1994, on page 1224, sepulcher means a vault for burial. To get an understanding of what this definition means, we must do a diligent inquiry into the nature of its intricate parts. So let us begin with the word vault. Referenced in the Synonym Finder by J.I. Rodell, copyright 1978, on page 1312, vault is synonymous to cove. And on page 238, cove is described as nook and shelter. Documented on page 786, nook is the same as private place. And noted on page 1102, shelter is equivalent to home. In view of all these facts, we can assert with absolute certainty that the chief priests and Pharisees wanted a judge to make a decision on some point of law requiring that some action must be performed by the Messiah, Yahweh Ben Yahweh, that centered around his private home. They wanted the private home that would be used for his burial to be made sure until the 3rd day, or until he had completed the last third of his 18-year prison sentence. Next, let us examine the word burial. In accordance with Webster's New World Dictionary, on page 187, burial means to bury. Bury, on page 188, means to conceal or plunge. On page 287, conceal means to put out of sight. On page 1040, plunge is defined as to force suddenly into a condition. And on page 290, condition means anything called for as a requirement before the completion of something. Anything that restricts the existence of something else. So we see here that the legal matter before the court involved chief priests and Pharisees begging a superior court judge to make a decision on some point of law that would suddenly force Yahweh Ben Yahweh to adhere to some restrictions while in his private home that would keep him out of the sight of his disciples, as well as restrict his presence or existence with them. The chief priests and Pharisees begged a judge to make these restrictions or conditions as requirements that must be performed by Yahweh Ben Yahweh until the 3rd day, or until the last third of his 18-year prison sentence is completed. What are these restrictions or conditions that this one child, the Messiah, would have suddenly forced upon him as a result of his mandatory release from prison? Since the New Testament was not fulfilled by anyone called Jesus some 2,000 years ago, then the answer to this question can only be authentically verified through actual court records at the time when the true Messiah, Yahweh Ben Yahweh, himself would be on earth. Therefore, let us review actual court records to validate this prophecy for the answer. The actual court record reads as follows.
In the United States District Court for the Southern District of Florida, Miami Division, case number 012848 CIV Moore, Order, Section B, and it reads, in this action, Yahweh Ben Yahweh challenges the imposition of the following parole conditions upon his mandatory release, which will occur on August 17, 2001. You shall not associate or have any contact with members of the Black Hebrew group. This includes direct or indirect contact through any means, to include internet, television, radio, phone, written form, or in person. This includes residence, employment, social, or other activities without the prior written approval of your U.S. probation officer. In addition, you shall be precluded from employment provided by members of the Black Hebrews or the group itself, or associate in any manner with group members without prior written approval of your U.S. probation officer. Further, you shall be prohibited from use of the Internet as a means of communication with members of the Black Hebrews. You shall not possess a computer with Internet access either personally or as part of any employment unless approved in writing by your U.S. probation officer.
However, these conditions were done and ordered in chambers at Miami, Florida, on the 15th day of August 2001 by K. Michael Moore, a United States District Judge, as prophesied. Thus, as written, the legal matter did indeed involve a ruling that was given with authority from K. Michael Moore, a district court judge, concerning some parole conditions that must be performed by Yahweh Ben Yahweh as a result of his mandatory release until the third day, meaning until he completes the remaining third of his 18-year prison sentence. Why was this so important to the chief priests and Pharisees? It was important because they wanted to keep Yahweh Ben Yahweh out of the sight of his disciples, as well as to restrict him from having any contact with them while in the sepulchre, his private home. Next week, we shall continue to decode Matthew chapter 27, verses 62 and 64, as we resume our course of singling out the family of Adam from the perspective of the word watch and its relationship to keep. I bear witness to you today that the Messiah, Yahweh Ben Yahweh, is here.
I bear witness to you today that the Mahdi is here.
I bear witness to you today that Shiloh is here. I bear witness to you today that the great light is here.
I bear witness to you today that the Grand Master of the Celestial Lodge, Architect of the universe, is here.
I bear witness to you today that the Enlightened One is here.
I bear witness to you today that the one all religions have been speaking of for almost 6,000 years is here.
Thank you for listening, and join us next week as we continue our discussion of the commandments of Yahweh.
Most people are not aware of the fact that America is in the Bible. She is cryptically called Babylon, Revelation 18:2. In 1986, Yahweh Ben Yahweh sent the president, vice president, his cabinet, every senator and congressman the book Yahweh Judges America, which warned them of the inevitable destruction of America. This book explains all that the prophets said would come upon America in the day of judgment. You can now read what Yahweh Ben Yahweh told the government over 10 years ago. To get a copy of Yahweh Judges America, call the number on your screen today.
Who is worthy? Who is worthy to open the book? Who is worthy to open the book and loose the seals thereof?
And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like unto the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow, and his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet like unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace, and his voice as the sound of many waters. At the end of time of evil rule, the Anointed One, the Messiah, shall appear. In 1979, Yahweh Ben Yahweh came to Miami and became the spiritual leader and founder of the Nation of Yahweh. Although he took a vow of poverty, in 7 years he guided the nation to amass a $250 million empire. Under his direction, the Nation of Yahweh has grown to encompass disciples, followers, and supporters in over 1,300 cities within the U.S. and 16 foreign countries. Yahweh Ben Yahweh is bringing about changes in the lives of individuals and is giving the world the keys to success in life, politically, economically, educationally, socially, and spiritually.
The word find reveals that we must be willing to search for answers. We must seek the help of Yahweh. Ask of Yahweh, and it shall be given unto us. Seek Yahweh, and we shall find. Knock at the door of Yahweh, and it shall be opened unto us. For everyone that asks of Yahweh receives of him, and he that seeks Yahweh finds him. And to him that knocks at the door of Yahweh, it shall be opened. Matthew chapter 7, verses 7 through 8. Know of a surety that all things, whatsoever we shall ask of Yahweh in prayer, believing we shall receive. Matthew chapter 21, verse 22. Therefore we say unto you, what things soever you desire, when you pray to Yahweh, believe that you receive them, and you shall have them. Mark chapter 11, verse 24. The word ask must be considered and studied carefully. It means to inquire, to test. It is the means by which the presence, quality, and genuineness of Yahweh is determined. Ask is a form of examination for evaluating the performance, capabilities, traits, and achievements of Yahweh. It is also the process of determining the nature of Yahweh. Ask means to interrogate, which means to examine Yahweh by questioning. It means to cross-examine, to examine by questions intended to check a previous examination. Examine closely and minutely. Ask means to request. It is the act of asking for something to be given or done. To ask for, especially politely.
Remember that this is the morning of the third day, and I shall rise again. I am the resurrection. All of prophecy tells you that I shall rise again. It's all about that. Luke chapter 2, verse 34. No doubt about it. Again, I love you forever, bless you forever. I remind you once again, my associates are children of the light. That just brings laughter to my heart, to my soul, to realize that at last I have those of you that love peace. And I only want to be in the presence of those of you that love peace. I love you forever. Shalom Aleichem.
The word find reveals that we must be willing to diligently search for answers. We must daily seek the help of Yahweh. We must always ask of Yahweh. And we must continually knock at the door of Yahweh. Know of a surety that all things whatsoever we shall ask of Yahweh in prayer, believing we shall receive. Hallelujah, Yahweh. Thank you for joining us in the universe of Yahweh. And now, we'd like to invite all of you to pray with us as we turn to the east with outstretched hands and say a prayer to our Heavenly Father, Yahweh, the Lord's Prayer in Hebrew. Come, let us pray. Tefillah, Ave Nu Shabbat Shemayim, Yikar Der Shemeaka, Tavo Malkuteaka, Yase Razonka, Kiva Shemayim Keng Baaretz, Et Lekem Kukenu, Tain La Nu Hayom, Uslak La Nu, Al Kartienu, Kimo Shasol Kim, Gamanaknu, La Koteum La Nu, Veal Tefienu, Lade Nisayom, Kim Kal Senu, Min Hara, Kilaka, Hamumlaha, Veha Givera, Veha Tiferet, Leolame, Olamin Sila. We thank thee, O Yahweh, O living and eternal King, who has so mercifully restored our souls within us. Selah. Praise Yahweh, and always remember that the Father, Yahweh, and His Son, Yahweh Ben Yahweh, love you, and your host loves you too. Shalom Aleichem.
To order the companion book to the series, The Messiah Revealed, call 1-800-967-PEACE. That's 1-800-967-7337. And when you call, ask about the special discount on the Royal Priesthood. Videos of this program are available. When ordering, please refer to the program number on the screen.
You can now access the divine mind of Yahweh Ben Yahweh on the internet at the address on the screen.